Today we're going to be focusing on shorts and features, primarily within the context of emerging creators. But as we'll talk about, there is overlap in streams that start to move into the so-called regular streams.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that. Why don't we start by, so have we talked about what the emerging creator program is in a nutshell?
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Well, I set up the tech.
Yes. Well, in a nutshell. Oh my God. Okay. So the program, its raison d'être, is to professionalize emerging producers, which means that if you're an emerging filmmaker, writer, or director, you do not simply, that's not your sole point of entry. You can come into all of our programs because you're an artist, you're a filmmaker, but you need to come in with producers that are admissible into the other programs. But if you are an emerging producer, your best point of entry is indeed into the program, because not only do you get development money and production money and money for discoverability, is that a word? But, and this is the thing, you get mentorship, you get masterclasses, and so when you get into the program as a producer, you learn the ropes, you learn to play by the book. And it's very, very complicated. And the reason why we set up the program in this way was that before it existed, the emerging producers of the time would get into the regular stream. And my team, and this is before I came in, but they would spend days and months teaching the ropes to the emerging producers. It's really hard to understand the rules, the normal route into filmmaking in Quebec and in Canada.
So what we tried to figure out, because I think, even talking to Maud, is like, you go on the SODEC website, the links are broken, the English doesn't work. So Johanne was kind enough and generous enough with her time to help. We have a couple flow charts here. Step one, do you own a production company? And Johanne, could you maybe explain
Yes. Yeah. Yes, because SODEC, unlike Le Calque, only finances companies. And in our program, in the emerging creator program, your company needs to have existed for 1 year at the moment of submission, and you and your company have got to have produced at least one short film that was shown in a professional venue, so a theater, a festival with a selective component, a platform that's recognized by CAFCO. So, in a professional venue, or there are professional YouTube channels also, but not your own personal YouTube channel.
I assume like Omeletto or Highball TV.
You would know them.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So what happens if you don't own a production company?
Well, as you wrote, Gavin, you start or find a production company. Yes. So if you are adamant that you want to be a producer, you want to own the rights, then by all means create your own company. When we wrote the program, there was, and there still is, an underrepresented number of companies that are owned by OLMC, owned by regional producers, owned by producers that self-identify as stemming from an ethno-cultural or BIPOC background, or not background, but
we get it.
Yeah, yes. So I think that we want to see this happening because, as all of you, I'm sure, believe, I think it's important to own our own stories and to be in control. This said, we are also agnostic in, if you as a regional filmmaker or a woman filmmaker, whatever, you are of course free to work with whomever you want to work. So that's why it's written there, you start your own company or you find one. So if you're just a filmmaker, you do not want to become a producer, then you just simply, you find a production company that is admissible into the program. Now, all companies, actually, even the established ones, are admissible into the program. The trick is that if they do that, if they do apply with a project, they need to have an emerging producer under their wing. They need to mentor an emerging producer. And maybe I should say that the minimum requirement I mentioned, you need to have produced at least one short. There's a maximum, right? If you've written, directed, or produced a feature that cost more than $1.5 million, you are not emerging. So stay out of our program. We'll get the money to the real emerging people. And so you are, of course, directed into the regular stream program.
And what we're trying to do here between the previous edition of Artrepreneurship, which was more producer focused, and now this version with SODEC support is writer-director focus, the people in this room now, like, you can collaborate with. So you don't just have to go to one of the big Francophone-owned companies of all white guys. We have
over 50.
Over 50. Yeah. Though if you're over 50 and emerging, please.
Yes, there's no age limit. There's no age limit. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So engage with the community. We'll hang out. We'll have some drinks. You can meet each other after. All right. So let's say you own a production company, or you have, a partner who owns a production company. Yes. Step one, have you completed development? What do you do?
Well, if you have not completed development, this is your way in, because once a year when we open up the program, we pick projects based on a pitch. It can be a written pitch or an audiovisual, a filmed pitch. We do not accept completed screenplays into the program. So you come in with a pitch. If you get selected for development on a short or on any format of documentary, once you get into the program now, and it's been like that for 2 years, the aim is to get you into production. There is no comparative in production. If you get into the program, you will make your film. If you come in with a feature, a feature-length fiction film, that's another story. We pick 5 every year. We develop 5, and we finance 1 in production with the money from the program. What happens, will you ask me, to the other 4?
We can get there later when we get to features.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Suspense.
Yeah, exactly.
Suspense.
Okay, so have you completed development? No? Then great. Apply for SODEC's Creator Program, Emerging Creator Program. Yes, if you, as Johanne explained, did it through this development program, then you apply to SODEC's Emerging Creator Program. And so far, it's almost 100%.
It's the same stream, yeah. It's the same. Yeah.
Now, the question is no, right? Like, let's say you didn't get into Emerging Creator Program, which is a majority of the applications, which we have the stats on. It's very competitive.
Yeah.
But you made it through development anyway, whether it's cours écrire ton cours or of your own accord.
That's right.
Can you still apply to SODEC? Can you still get production?
The answer is yes. So if you already have a finished screenplay for a short, you come into the regular stream, it's aide à la production, in which there are different substreams, and one of them is called Volet 2, and it finances shorts. So that's your way in. And in that volet, we get emerging talent projects, and we get regular projects too. And our committees the 2 types are not in competition with each other. It's important, because if they were, I don't think we'd see a lot of emerging projects go through, because the committee has to, it's not simply, the creative value of the screenplay or the director's vision. It's also, what have you made before? And so obviously, if you're not an emerging filmmaker anymore and you come in with a short, your pedigree is much more impressive and long than an emerging creator. So our committees look at the project separately, and we make sure that in that volet 2, we finance emerging projects and regular projects.
Yeah, and going through this, figuring this out with Johanne, something I realized I was confused about was this is volet 2.
Yeah.
There's also a volet 1, but they're not necessarily chronological. And I think this is, well, they're both l'aide à la production, but they're kind of unrelated in a way. We'll get to that in just a second, but I just wanted to share that because it was definitely an unblocker for me.
I never said we were perfect. Yeah. No, it is confusing, so they call features.
Is it the same thing? Do you own a production company? No,
That's right.
That's the same?
Yeah, well, you actually, yes, if you want to come into the program with a feature, obviously, again, you need to have your own company or come with an admissible company. And there's an added complexity because if, when I said to get into the program, the minimum is you have produced with your company 1 short film. If you come in with a feature, you need to have produced 3. That's the minimum. Because at the end of the process, if your feature film is picked up for production, you get $750,000. And so obviously we want to give this money to someone who has produced a minimum of 3 shorts.
Great. Okay, so you've made it through the eligibility criteria. Similarly, have you completed development? No, this is the ideal scenario.
Right.
You
Yes.
start from the beginning with
That's
SODEC.
right. That's right.
Is there anything unique about the development program on the feature side that we should address?
Well, there's a little bit of good news, I guess, for next year. And I shouldn't be talking about this because it's not done yet. But we've asked the ministry to enable us to give more money. So right now, it happens. So right now, if you get picked up for development on a feature, you get $25,000. Next year would be $35,000. It's not. I know that the minimum usually for a union SARTEC written project is $60,000. They of course accept other types of paychecks, but anyway, so $35,000, and so. Like I said before, we pick 5, and at the end of the process, there's a comparatif. I don't know the English word for that. What is that? A comparative. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, and so we pick 1. Is now the time when I say what happens to the 4 that get refused or not?
Let's hold that thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is life.
Yeah. Okay. So you made it through development. Yeah. Let's say it's 5 features that make it through development. So have you completed development? Yes, with emerging creators. Right. Then you apply, those 5, you obviously apply for production.
Yeah.
And now. Right. How many get into production? Because that's the difference. With shorts, basically almost everyone who goes through development gets to production.
Right.
It's like 1 out of 5 out of the features.
And so if you, and I don't think we mentioned it, but every year, maybe we could throw in a few numbers now.
Sure.
I think in 2024, we got 127 projects coming in, and we picked, I think it's
those are the stats.
like 60,
I think I have them for 2025, but if you tell me it's 20...
Is it 20? No, okay, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I get confused.
That's okay. So...
Yeah, there we go. So that's 2020. So this is this year. Okay. So we got 127 projects. That's shorts, documentary, features, all in all. 17 of these 127 were English language project. That's only 17. And then, because of Gavin, I have no life because I
spent her weekend calculating how many were potentially OLMC teams.
I took all our grids and I looked at the profile of the English projects that we received, and I tried, like, this is my educated guess. Obviously at Téléfilm, you'll get to fill out a form and you'll get to self-identify as OLMC. We don't have that at SODEC, but we know people most of the time. So I tried to identify which would be considered OLMC. So what Téléfilm explained to me is that the production company will need to identify as OLMC. The producer needs to self-identify as OLMC, and at least one of the two other persons on the project, the director and the screenwriter, need to also identify as OLMC. So when I did that, I think I'm not wrong, out of the 17 English language projects that we got, only 4 would have self-identified and been considered OLMC. And I think 5 were written in English by no one, by all Francophones. But the rest, so that's, 5 plus 4 is 9. So 8, yes, that's it. 8 of the 17 were projects where the creative duo, the screenwriter and the filmmaker were clearly Anglophones, but the producer wasn't. So there's that happening. And like I said before, we are agnostic. Because to make a film, you need to find a family. And if you feel comfortable with a producer, by all means, be part of that family. So it seems like there's a huge portion of projects that are aiming to be in English, where the creators find non-Anglophone producers, but there's also the rest of them. And so obviously, I would hope to see more OLMC projects, if you want to grow as a community. So out of the 127 projects, we accepted 16. That's a ratio of an acceptance ratio of 12.5%. This is our most competitive program. It's the most heartbreaking because so many projects get refused, right? So out of the 16, 2 were English language, and I believe that one of the 2 was one of the 4 OLMC projects. The other one was an OLMC duo working with a Francophone producer.
So what I highlighted was, to your point, what's interesting is it seems from OLMCs, 25% were accepted versus 13%. And so, it's not like everything. It's which data dimension do you pick at, which side of the pie you look at.
Yes.
But I thought that was a fair point, that it's like, we can apply more. There may be more opportunities.
That's, absolutely.
I've been very critical. So
No, but I mean,
I think
for
this
real.
is a good fact that it's like, we could be applying more.
Yes. I think, what this tells me, and every time I do similar stats, what is comforting to me in my position is that this, I think, proves that our juries are eager to fund projects that are original, that give us new perspectives, new visions, right? It tells me that at the very least, the jury was not against OLMC or against English projects, right? But it also, what I want to say is that, of course, when you read our press release, and if you read this one, you saw 16 projects, and you went down the list and only saw 2 English ones, right? So that's, it's demoralizing. If I put myself in your shoes, you go, okay, that's right. What it doesn't tell you is that, of course, so 14 French were accepted out of 100 or something. So there's almost 100 French projects that were refused, and they're all getting drunk somewhere because, they're miserable. So everyone is miserable, but the more you will apply, and this we did not talk about, but the more you apply, the more the stat at the point of entry we will be able to use to show to the government, look, this is there's a critical mass. There's a real community there, and we need to take care, we need to help them. And so if there's no critical mass, it's very hard for a community to show up in a press release, in stats, So I would, you need to be resilient. You will get refused and rejected over and over and over again, but so are the Francos, right? It's a hard business. But you need to try. You need to come in and come back and come back. There was a comparative in post-production recently, and we said yes to a filmmaker producer. If we had said no, this would have been his 12th refusal in a row, but he never quit. He came back. So it's important. Right, so blah, blah, blah. Okay, so out of the 127 projects that came in, only 24 were for features. And in the 24, only one was in English. And hélas, when we picked 5, that project did not make it. So again, you read the press release, you saw no English features this year. In other years, we've almost always had one, not this year. So you read the press release, there's no English features, there you go, well, SODEC is not for me. But we had one, so it's hard.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And that was the only English language project submission, right? So, do we want to talk? So, I mean, just generally, I thought this was the stat that was worth talking about.
Sure.
Is for context, there's a $3 million funding pool.
Right. That's right. Because we accept about 15 shorts and documentaries, and then 5 feature-length fiction films in development. Like I said, all the shorts and the docs get financing. So shorts get $115,000, docs get $138,000, and the feature gets $750,000. That's the bulk of the money of the $3 million. But with the $3 million, we also finance events like today. So activities, mentorship programs, special projects that come in to help the emerging community, we finance that. This year we received, I think, about 12 projects, only one in English, yours, and it was picked up. Because, I was waiting for it. Because
we only got half the money we asked for.
Well, because yes, I know. Yeah. See,
you brought it up.
So I know. But everyone was cut for different reasons. Let's move on. But let's move on. And we finance Cours Écrire ton cours, which is a screenwriting contest in which 7 screenwriters get picked with their projects and go through a mentorship program. Out of the 7, there's always 5 in French, 2 in English. And at the end of the process, some of them win prizes. But like I like to say, the real prize is the process, is to go through to write and develop your short with a mentor and with a community, because with a cohort. A cohort? What? Yes, because for 2 months you pretty much, but you can attest to that because you went through a course.
Yeah, and I think, is Matthew still here, or did he have to go? Yeah, so he's here, we're friends.
Also,
and,
yes.
Okay. A very valuable relationship.
Yes. And that's it. I think now is the time to say what I wanted to say before, where, there are 5 features that we develop, we pick one. The 4 rejected features that were developed inside the program, what happens to them, right? Well, they too can come back next year with a co-producer, admissible to the regular stream, or, and this is what I've observed this year, you can sit on your project until that time when you are admissible alone into the regular stream. And I'm seeing a project that we developed, but that was not picked up from a few years ago. And the producer is now admissible by herself into the regular stream, and she's coming back with her feature. So there's always, where there's a will, there's a way, I like to say.
There's a long day.
Yeah, or you could go to CMF,
we play the
Anglophone
long
Minority
game.
Initiative.
Yes, you're young.
No, such was her.
Present. Yeah.
All right, should we move on?
Okay, yeah, sure.
All right, so, I mean, ultimately here it's what's the budget? Under $35 million for a feature or over $35 million? Can you, what did I say? Thank you. So, can you remind me, you're at this, do you need to have developed with SODEC or?
No.
Either way? You either went through SODEC or not?
If the project that you want to come into the regular stream with a co-producer, if it's under 3.5, then you are looked at with the other similar projects, and it's the low budget stream, which is very, very similar to what Téléfilm does, because we like to look at the same projects at the same time. So let me explain what happens there. So if it's a low budget film, you come in with your co-producer. We usually receive about 35 projects, and we choose 4. Yeah. And the added difficulty here is that in the low budget comparatif, we look at the English and the French projects together. Whereas when you apply in the same zone, in the same stream, but at Téléfilm, those are 2 pockets of money. There's money for the English projects and there's money for the French projects. So the committee at Téléfilm, if they explained it correctly to me, they only look at the English projects, but it's a pan-Canadian comparatif. So this is one place where our programs do not align very well, and it really bugs me. And I don't know if you were invited or if you will be this Friday. Myriam Rafla and Myriam works at Téléfilm Canada in the English sector. We're doing a joint presentation of our programs, and we will be addressing how sometimes they are complementary and sometimes they don't fit well. This is one place where it doesn't fit well. So what I observed for a few years is that because the few English projects were compared to the multitude of French projects, almost none would go through. So last year I decided to go about it a different way. So I've asked, and I will ask again, I will ask my committee to compare the English projects together and the French projects together. And we set aside money to choose at least one. And of course, if more are stellar, then more will be picked up. But if we never say yes to an English feature-length projects, how will the community grow, right? So that's something that we're doing. Now, in the meantime, of course, what happens is that Téléfilm Canada comes up with more yeses than we do, right? So if that happens to you, if Téléfilm says yes, and for some reason we say no, then know that you can go back to Téléfilm, ask for a top-up. This has happened over and over again. They will give it to you, and you come back to us in post-production. That's one way that we can finally connect. So if we don't say yes to the same project, that's another way to hustle your way to getting production money. This year, I'm happy to say that we picked the same project. So I'm really happy about that. But so that's one, it's a zone that needs work, that needs love, you know. And then if your project is 3.5 or over, and again, you of course find a co-producing partner. It's a whole different ballgame. A few years ago, big budgets, we also looked at the English projects alongside the French projects. And what would happen there would that we would pick two a year, and then Téléfilm would never follow suit. You know, so we'd be sitting on millions of dollars on English projects that went nowhere. So I said, okay, fine. Okay, so we changed the program, and we said, you know what? If it's a big budget, let Téléfilm choose first, and then we'll see if we can follow suit. So if you go read the program, that's what you'll be reading. So big budget English films need to be picked up by Téléfilm before coming to us. The upside is that it's not like twice a year. It's like as soon as you get Téléfilm's money, you can come in. It's open all year. Every year I speak with Marinez, I'm sorry, I stutter. And I tell her, okay, this year we have this amount of millions for English projects. So Marinez, please don't pick too many because we'll have to refuse some, right? So she tries not to pick too many. And then what happens is that if, let's say I'm you, Téléfilm refuses your project, but you find private money. You find a way to get the majority of your financing in place, you can still come in. But basically, we want to be the last ones in. We want to be a complement, a financial complement to big budget English films. So you come in either because Téléfilm said yes or because you found another way to finance your film and the majority of your financing is in place. And if you're an emerging producer with this project, you come in, of course, with a co-producer that has co-produced big budget films before. That's your way in.
Quick clarification on the under 3.5.
Yeah.
You were talking about working towards always having or working towards one English language project. Can I just make sure, are we talking about an English language project or a non-French project under the Anglophone stream?
A non-French. But there I should say that if we get few English ones, we get even fewer other language, you know, and by other language, it's because as a producer, you have to fill out a form, and so the producers are the ones to tell us, no, this will not be in English, this will not be in French, this will be in Chinese or in Spanish. And so indeed, last year, we financed one non-French film, low budget, and it was in Spanish. This year, though, it was in English.
Okay, cool. Moving on.
Yep.
So I think that takes care of the general broad overview. We'll send this out. Obviously, I have to clean up a few things and add the hyperlinks. Should we introduce our special guest if they're willing to join us?
Oh, yes, the success story?
Yeah.
Yes, because Gavin said, you need to tell us, about a project in English that you financed that really wowed
Give
everyone.
us hope.
Yes, give us hope, please.
Yeah.
And so I came up with a title. Well, my team suggested it. It's a short. It's called White Noise. And I had to ask the producer permission to tell you about this project, and lo and behold, I was walking up the staircase and the producer was there. I said, this is silly. I'm not going to talk about your project when you're there. So Christina.
We're hoping you'll join us.
And so before, avant que je te passe le micro, comme on dit, I just would like to generally, when we look at English projects, obviously, what irks most juries are projects that come in that clearly are trying to erase the specificity of the Anglo-Quebec reality. The action takes place in a nondescript North American city. The characters are not Canadian or Quebecois, or they're just North Americans. And the whole project really just feels like an ersatz of a Hollywood film. And I'm sorry if the subtext here seems to be I'm bashing these projects. I mean, there's a whole parallel industry that exists, and it has value, and that's what you want to do, go for it. But SODEC is a cultural fund. We fund films that hopefully will give everyone in Quebec a sense of who they are, and that includes the Anglo-Quebec community. So when we do get projects that really talk about or give us a vision into, or give us the perspective of the Anglo-Quebecois, and there's not one type of Anglo-Quebecois, there's a multitude, then the juries usually prick up. That's what they're looking for. And I was talking again with Myriam, and we'll be discussing this on Friday. It's the same with them, you know. So if you want a cultural fund, then I guess we're looking for something that is really a testament to your voice and to your vision of who you are, you know, in our world. And that doesn't mean that it needs to take place in Montreal and blah, blah, blah. I mean, obviously, Incendie, you know, to talk about a French film, you know, has these two tiny Quebecois characters, and the whole action took place in the desert and the Middle East, you know. That's fine. I mean, you as a Quebecois filmmaker or producer have a vision, have something to say about the world, and that's fine. But it's the nondescript Hollywood ersatz that irks most people. The way we go about saying this is a Francophone project, this is an Anglophone project, this is an other language project, is first of all by the language in which the documents were written. So if it's written in French, whether it becomes a bilingual film or a 3-language film or an all-French film, if we receive the documents in French, it's a French project. If we receive the documents in English, whether it becomes an all-English or bilingual or trilingual film, it starts out as an English project. But then, if the producer says, it's in English, but actually it's going to be in Chinese, then it's categorized as an other language project. In recent years, we've seen a lot of projects either written in French or English that will clearly on screen be bilingual. And I think that there's an appetite for that in our juries. That's something that I can attest to. I don't know how it was 10 years ago or 6 years ago, but because I just talked about, you know, we're looking for films that show your reality. Well, most people living in Montreal have a bilingual reality, so that it's completely fine. The hurdle might occur in this rule that we have to live by. It was written in the 1980s. So if someone wants to lobby the government to maybe ask them to have a look at the rule that I'm about to explain, to maybe change it, be my guest, okay? There's a rule that says that SODEC needs to invest at least 80% of its yearly budget in Francophone projects. So what I've begun noticing are projects that come in that will be bilingual films, but they're all written in French. It's just a good idea, because then I can say yes to that project inside my 80% budget. But indeed, when when we get English projects, then we're kind of stuck with that rule, that 20% that can go elsewhere. Right now, though, because we receive so few English written projects, the only time in 9 years, the only time I was in a comparative and I said, we cannot say yes to this fourth English project because we will bust the 20%, was in the regular stream documentary. Why? Because that's the program where there's more English projects than in any other program. And so I'm keeping that stat really close by, because in that program, it shows that if we get more English projects, the rule won't work anymore. But until that time, there's no incentive for the government to change the rule, because we never get enough English project to bust the 20%. Okay, it's so dry. My presentation is so dry. But let's talk about success and hope.
Christina,
okay, so
would you join us?
Yay! So Christina came in with white noise. Have a sit. No. Have a sit. Sit. Yeah.
I can just add.
Listen to the director, Christina. You should maybe.
Yeah, here. No, you keep yours. I'll put mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please don't.
Yes, to the spot. And you have to slide the bag after.
Can I just hold it? Like,
You could even clip it to your headphones.
no, it's good.
It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So Christina, why don't you start by introducing yourself and the film?
Hello, everybody. My name is Christina Saliba. I'm a Montreal-based film producer. And we're talking about White Noise, which is a short psychological thriller that was generously supported by SODEC, thankfully. Otherwise, we would not have been able to do it.
So did you go through from development to production? Did you do the whole emerging creator?
No. So I applied through the Volet 2, the production fund for short films. Okay. So it was not originally through the Créateurs Émergents.
But you were an emerging producer inside the Volet 2, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me more first about how you developed the film.
I'm not used to this kind of question. How did we develop the film? Well, it originally started off as a feature film, which was being developed through the Canadian Film Centre, which is a film.
Like the Juilliards of Canada, film Canada.
Sure, it's a film institute in Toronto, and they have a fantastic programming there and mentorships. And I was going through their producers lab. So originally White Noise started off as this feature that was going through this lab, and listen, there's no blueprint here. It was so random. There was never an idea to make a short film. One day through the lab, my director Tamara Sherbach and I came across the Harold Greenberg's fund.
Which doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, doesn't exist anymore. And that was back in 2021. It was their last year, and then they became kind of defunct after that, unfortunately. But they had a program called the Shorts to Features program. And we thought, why the hell not? Let's just throw together a short film, and hopefully we'll get the funds in order to use that short film as a calling card for the feature. We miraculously threw together a script. I know how that sounds. I'm not trying to be pretentious here at all, but we threw together a script, and miraculously we did end up getting that funding, and that kind of then spiraled into, well, how are we going to make this film? Because that amount of funding from Harold Greenberg, which is, it's just not substantial. It's not enough to make a short film. So we thought, where else are we going to find this fund? And SODEC was the next bet. And does that answer that question a little bit, how we developed it?
So you applied to Créateurs Émergents.
No, as a créateur émergent into
la production Volet 2.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And what was that process like? Did you get it on the first try?
Oh, no, so we didn't. We had applied back in the September deadline, and we got the unfortunate news that we didn't get the funding. Right away, we set up a call with SODEC. Not all funders will do this, so it's quite nice.
But you should.
Yeah, you set up a call if you don't get the funds and get the feedback as to why you didn't get it. It's highly beneficial for all of us to know what is it about our project that's not connecting with the funders. And we got some great feedback. And the reality is that the jury read the piece and didn't quite, they didn't feel that it, we were selling it as a horror, and it really just wasn't. It really wasn't quite hitting that mark. So again, invaluable feedback, because we went back, we made some necessary adjustments to the script, and we realized this really isn't a horror, this is a psychological thriller. It just fits squarely and beautifully in that genre. Addressed the notes SODEC gave us, and luckily, I know this doesn't always happen, but luckily we did get the funding the second time around. We had applied with a very small budget, and I remember Hugo Bosser was our program officer. Super generous, and I have to say he literally held my hand throughout the whole process, and he actually, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but he actually encouraged us to apply for more funding. So
see, we do this.
Yeah, they do this. So we had asked SODEC for, I think, like 40,000 or something like that, and Hugo was like, "You're not going to be able to make the film with 40,000. Come back to us with, let's look at the budget. I think you might be able to change these things. Go back, review the budget, and come back to us with something that feels a little bit more feasible for your project." I came back, and I'm very demanding, and I came back asking for double. So I came back and I was like, "Give me all you got," which was about like 90 to 100,000, and we ended up getting that amount. I think that answers it. Yeah.
And if I may,
Please.
The relationship that you struck with Hugo is kind of interesting, and this is what I was talking about before. That before we created the program, these kinds of discussions and mentoring inside SODEC would take place on all the projects. It was really, it gets to be very heavy to handle, especially as SODEC is like the rest of society. There's less and less workers and more projects. And so that's why if you had come in through the actual program, the discussion you had with Hugo would have been actually officialized inside the program with the Masterclasses, because when you're in the program, you learn about, the budgeting and the tax credits and blah, blah, blah. So I'm really happy that Hugo, did that, but it's also proof that the emerging projects that do get production money in the regular stream volet 2 don't get the official mentoring, but they get the non-official mentoring, right? Yeah.
I'll tell you, I was so inexperienced. And when because you have to do the whole tax credits as well. Luckily, through Harold Greenberg, we got a Crave license, a Bell Media license.
Yes, right.
And that allowed us to unlock the tax credits. And again, Hugo and SODEC just held my hand through the whole thing. And I know he's probably not supposed to have done that, but very generous with their time. I was not an easy client of SODEC. I was constantly emailing them and calling them and just harassing them constantly. "Please help me. I don't know how to do this. What am I supposed to do with this money now?" And they were just very, very kind. Yeah.
Something else I like about white noise, because earlier today in the cohort, we were talking about sometimes it's challenging for artists who also own production companies to wrap their head around what is maybe more obvious to, let's say, Americans, the idea of exploiting intellectual property, because white noise, if I understand correctly, is now being developed as an anthology series.
Yeah.
Is that correct? I mean, it was a feature, you developed a short, and is there anything you can share about like the genesis of the intellectual property? And I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room. It's like you go to a market and a TV person is like, "Have you thought about this as a series?" You turn it into a series through a development program in Vancouver, you pitch it, and they're like, "Maybe this is a feature film." And then you're like, "Maybe you should do a proof of concept as a podcast." And you're always pulled in different directions, and you don't know how to interpret market signals or an individual's opinion. So, I mean, on that front, can you share anything with anyone who might also be going through this? Like, tell me about the journey of white noise as intellectual property.
Okay. I think if you got something really special, you can absolutely expand that world into many different avenues, whether it's a short, a feature, a series, digital. And I think with white noise, we were really connected. When we were able to showcase the short at different festivals, a lot of women came up to us after the festival and were really touched by the material. And it's a short about this woman who has a hypersensitivity to sound. And she's having a very hard time living in a world that's alive with sound. And she eventually discovers that there's this anechoic chamber, which is the world's quietest room. They really exist in real life. And there's a clinical trial happening there, and she has to beg her doctor to gain access to this trial. Once that does happen, she succeeds. And when she's in this chamber, she thinks she's found solace, but as her time increases in this chamber, she starts to hear the inner workings of her own body, and that drives her to madness, essentially, and she bludgeons her eardrums, subsequently deafening herself. So this is being developed into a... Well, I mean, the genesis of it...
I'm laughing at the audience reaction.
No, I know. Oh, she bludgeons herself. And paradoxically, that self-harm ends up saving her life.
I was going to add it.
Oh, yeah. That was in the pitch, too. So originally this started off as a feature, and we realized that how are we going to pitch this film when it's about sound? And in the feature, sound is a monster. So it really is a full-on horror film, the feature. And we thought, how the hell are we going to showcase that sound tangibly? How can we showcase sound? So we thought, let's do a short film. Again, super random, and it worked. I do have some regrets about the short in terms of the script a little bit. Looking back, I would have changed a few things, but it's like that with any kind of art, I think. And the short worked. The short really is a microcosm of the third chapter of the feature, and it does stand alone as well, and we were able to showcase that at film festivals.
You won, actually, at Fantasia.
Yes, we did win. Thank you, Johanne. We did win at Fantasia, that's right, the Audience Award and Best Canadian Short. And it was really connecting specifically with women, I will say. It is a film about the dismissiveness of female suffering and medical gaslighting. Again, as most of the women in the audience can attest to, I'm sure we've been denied care at one time or another. But yeah, then it was so weird because we pitched the feature at the Whistler Film Festival, the Power Pitch competition, which I highly encourage you all to look into. And we ended up winning that pitch. And there was a TV producer who was in the jury, Adam Steinman, and he was with Warner Brothers at the time. And he was the one that planted that idea. Oh, I see this as a...
He's from Montreal.
Yeah, he is from Montreal. Mount Royal Films, right. And he was the one that planted the idea because he's from a TV background. And he was just like, yeah, I see this as a TV series.
Yeah,
and
they all do.
Yeah, they all do.
They all see it as whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. So then that's it. There's no science. We're like, all right, this guy is saying it could be a series. Let's think about that. Let's see how we could make that happen. And so we threw around some ideas. Again, that's Tamara Sherbak, who was the co-writer and the director of the short, and she's directing the feature. And another great program, the CMF, Canada Media Fund Pre-Development Program, is something we applied to. We just, again, no science. We threw together an idea. We pitched the idea to a broadcaster, Hollywood Suite, and they gave us a letter of interest. And then we applied for the CMF Pre-Development Fund, which is a first come, first serve. So if you have that LOI from a broadcaster and you apply immediately, you're pretty much guaranteed that funding. There's nothing else that'll stop you from getting that funding. And we got the funding. And then we're like, all right, let's come up with the... I know how this sounds, by the way. It sounds really bad.
We talked today about the importance of iterative design.
Okay.
And whether it's rejections is a form of that, where, the process of refining, polishing, developing, that's the process, right? And so, I mean, you're joking about how things kind of became easier, but it's because you went through many layers of iteration that got it to the point where it's like your elevator pitch is solid. This isn't the first time you're going in with a 5 minute, okay, do a 3 minute. You had a cocktail. Like you have all those tools, and it's getting more polished and refined. So it's not a surprise that it's easier for people to say yes at that point.
Yeah, I just want to say we're still developing the feature film. We had a scrapped, and that's 5 years into developing this feature. And only last year we decided to kind of totally scrap the script. We brought on a new writer, and now we're redeveloping it with a script editor. So I know I'm saying, we just randomly did all of this, but it's been consistent hard work for around 5 years now. And white noise is a very particular idea, I think. Sound as a monster and hypersensitivity to sound. I have not seen a lot of that. So I think there's something very interesting about that story. That's it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. You can always stay for a minute. Let's see if there are any specific questions you might be able to speak to. If you're okay with that, Johanne?
Sure.
Any final words, anything we didn't cover in the presentation before we get to questions?
I just want to repeat that, I know it's discouraging to read our press release and to not see your community all that much listed there. But I can assure you, and the data seems to prove me right, that there is an appetite for your projects. But you need to apply, and you need to apply, and you need to apply. So, and of course, and I'm pretty sure you talked about this, but, obviously if you're a producer, I don't think it's possible to make a living just by making film in Quebec. You need to diversify. That's really important. And if you're a filmmaker, just know that even though you are an emerging filmmaker, screenwriter, director, all our doors are open, all our programs are open to you. You just need to be with a producer that is admissible to specific programs.
Can I just echo?
Thank you for inviting me, because I rarely get the opportunity to meet people like that, and I, without getting emotional, my 25 people, the team, I'm so glad that you spoke of, Hugo, they are not, ce ne sont pas des fonctionnaires, okay? We are passionate, true lovers of film, and we're there for you, and we take it at heart. You are not numbers, and so we need to build trust. There is a lack of trust between us, and this, because you invited me, that I think it's like stepping block to create that trust. So thank you, Gavin.
Thanks for being here.
Sure.
Can I echo one thing? I want to echo what you said. Just don't give up, man. Don't give up. Like, seriously, one of the biggest qualities you can have as a producer and as a filmmaker is just the persistence. If you look at my calc applications, I have like 20 or 30 no's and maybe one yes. But those yeses do come. They really, really do. Just don't give up, and just listen to what Johanne said and be persistent.
I'll also build on that in saying that what we mostly talked about in the workshops is SODEC is a potential funder.
Right.
Not the only potential funder. That's what we're trying to do. We shared case studies. There's Canada Council. We talked about film funds. There's CMF. They have the Anglophone Minority Initiative. So, in terms of, we talked about finite and infinite games, it's like the SODEC game is a game you can play. Keep trying to figure out those rules. Keep applying if you can, and if it makes sense as a potential partner. But, there are lots of potential partners out there. SODEC is one of them. Any questions?
Question.
Caleb, Calgary.
I'm just wondering for SODEC, is there any portions that when you're approving do you look at commercial viability of the project? Because you might have a project that is Quebecois, but will it be is there a universality to that project? Okay, if we make this project, we put millions of dollars. Maybe we take something that is universal. Actually, it could make us money. I go to a lot of let's say in this town, there's all these wonderful, wonderful projects. And then you go to like the film festival and you see what's being accepted and what is being made. And it is a total antithesis. It's like,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like something that is commercially viable outside of Canada.
Isn't your favorite film Blue Velvet?
Thank you. No.
But okay, so I'm going to, so we never use the word commercial at SODEC. We're a cultural fund. What we do talk about is our desire to fund engaging films. And that means either films that will find an echo in Quebec, so find a public in Quebec, which translates as commercial success, or will find an echo internationally, which means they will be picked up by festivals. That's and the holy grail is when you find a project that does both, of course. So we don't talk about commercial because, there is a commercial industry. They don't need us, or we have the few millions of dollars that we have, we want to put into cultural projects. And some of them are for niche audience, and some of them are for very wide audiences, because we don't have a preset conception of what is, to us, culture is very, very wide. It's the niche film, and it's the big, the blockbuster. But if we think that it's a purely commercial film and ersatz of whatever play, when you take the plane and you watch movies, it's not for us. It's not our thing.
Wait, no, I understand that. It was even like Coach Fund and is like your native blockbuster. But I was thinking of some kind of like, if you make this movie, it can be seen by a wider audience. There is this overlap of artistic value.
Well, that's the holy grail. That's the holy grail. But we don't shy away from funding films that are niche, So we don't look at the commercial viability. I'm using your words, I think. What we look at are the chance, les chances de rayonnement. How will it be? What are its chances to reach its public, its designated public? That's how we look at things.
If I can ask a follow-up question, it's like, but tax credits, for example, provincially require a broadcaster distributor in Quebec to be triggered.
Yes, to get the Quebec tax credits, yes.
So there are certain market signals that do come into play. I guess the question is, does that get taken into consideration at the production phase? Like, do you have an increased likelihood of getting funding if you have broadcasters and distributors?
Okay, I think the answer is no, but let me expand. In the Emerging Talent Fund, in all of the programs except the big budget regular stream, you can come in and be picked up and be funded in production, even if you don't have a distributor or a broadcaster. Why? Because there are very few ones in Quebec. If we demanded that everyone coming in, submitting, has already found a distributor, we would get very few projects. We think that when we say yes to a project that doesn't have yet a distributor or a broadcaster, the yes, the knowing that the film will exist, will be a lever to persuade a distributor to come on board. Now, if it's a big budget, if it's over 3.5 million, there you need to get in, you need a distributor. That's the place. So then sometimes when we look at films, some already have a broadcaster, Crave, or a distributor. So of course, that's like yay. But if it's a stellar creative projects, we won't stop ourselves from saying yes just because they don't yet have a broadcaster or a distributor. And you should also know that some producers self-distribute. That can also happen. You need to apply for a license, a distribution license, and that's fine too, because a lot of, especially in documentary, we see that a lot, because most distributors don't have the will or the time to go grassroots, distribution, whereas the producers very oftentimes will, travel in schools and in, church basements and just go with the film and showcase it, and that has value also.
I just want to double check. You only have to apply for the license to then be eligible to trigger tax credits yourselves, if you're self-distributing.
I believe so.
Yeah, like you could just self-distribute, and you could self-distribute. You just
Yes.
want to trigger the tax credits. I guess one follow-up question there, because I think it's possible, is like, for English language at least, would SODEC hold it against you if your financing structure does not have tax credits built into the production budget because you don't have confidence that you'll get a Quebec distributor, even if you're confident that it's going to do very well nationally and internationally?
No, we don't hold it against the project when it comes in and we evaluate it.
You can submit without the tax credits built into the
That's right.
financing.
Yeah, but of course you need, the film needs to be feasible without that amount.
But you could do like 750 from SODEC, 750 from CMF's Anglophone Minority Initiative, no tax credits, call it a day at 1.5.
Except we never see that happen, because because those numbers are for a feature, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't recall us financing a feature and Téléfilm financing a feature that never was distributed. What?
In this case, I'm talking CMF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was never distributed.
No, it would be distributed. I guess the question stems from the expectation is often that now with government funders, the expectation is tax credits are built into the financing structure.
Yes.
And as we've talked about, this puts the producer at high risk. As you were there at the UPCQ meeting when they said the average wage of a producer is $19 an hour.
Yes.
And we're expected to potentially remortgage our houses on tax credits with interim clutter.
Which we don't want to see.
So what we've been exploring in the workshops is expectation versus reality. And so in a case like this, let's say an English language producer, this big project, track record, all this stuff, and they said, listen, this is going to be very successful. We have a national, let's say a vortex. We have interest from the US sales agents. We don't think we're going to get a Quebec distributor, and we don't care. We may or may not get like a second window with CBC, but basically we know we can get this deal done with 750 from SODEC, 750 from CMF or Telephone, doesn't matter. But I guess what I'm pointing out is I think it's a potential path to success for people working in English in Quebec to have a success case that never gets Quebec distribution, but to protect themselves, they might not include tax credits in the budget.
Okay, but it's tricky because we want the film to be shown in Quebec. So if you don't have a distributor or a broadcaster showing the film in Quebec, you need to self-distribute.
Not necessarily, it would just be outside of Quebec.
Well, that becomes a problem for us because we want, again, it comes back to what I was saying, we finance Quebec culture. So we want the films to become part of our culture. We want the film to be seen here and not simply internationally. It needs to be available to the
Bit of a
public.
challenge though, because it's like, the people that are going to movie theaters specifically in Quebec may not be interested.
Sure, okay, but at least it's available.
The only reason I care is for the tax credit financing. The question was basically, would SODEC hold it against us?
Not at the point of entry and in the jury, because we expect that if we say yes, you guys will want to be shown in Quebec, and you will.
Ideally.
Yes.
Produce back. It's a copy.
So then I still over the figure quality grass based partition and very 40 cast, right?
Crave is Crave works. Yeah. Netflix, no.
Even though it could be about it.
Yeah.
I could have hide it like that.
No.
And there's some things like Amazon Prime Video, because you're self-distributing, I don't think it counts as a licensed broadcast.
Yeah.
Tax credits.
What's your name?
I'm Spark.
Spark.
Right. Hi, I'm Spark. And the JQuery photo, I have 4 projects. They kind of fall into different categories. So this was an amazing, just want to say thank you for the chart, the path. That was exactly what I needed to see. Out of the statistics that you worked so hard on to collect, how many of those out of each were struggling and people with disabilities?
Oh, we don't collect data on that. The data that we collect is regional, and then we ask teams to, if they want, to self-identify as coming from an ethno-cultural community. So there's the producer, the writer, the director, and then there's English, French, or other language. And there's, is it written or directed by a woman? That's the data that we collect. You can also self-identify as LGBTQ+, but since no group has come to us to ask for the data, that data, so we have, the data exists, but it's never been looked at.
What are the things to keep in mind from a calendar perspective?
Well, if you go on the website, all the dates are there, but if you want to come into the Emerging Creator Program, there's one point of entry per year, and it's in spring. It's usually in May. So if you've never applied to SODEC, please, at least 1 month before the due date, you need to come in, speak to Hugo, who's now at the point of entry. Hugo or Isabelle Doré, you need to speak to them. They will look at the profile of your company and you as a producer, and they will tell you, oh, fine, you are an emerging producer. Or sometimes they will say, oh, but you're not emerging. You're already just a regular producer. Anyway, so you need to get that done at least 1 month before the due date. And for le volet 2, the regular stream production funding for shorts, it was twice a year. Next year it will be the first year where it's once a year, and it'll be during the fall. And the reason why we had to do that was that twice a year we'd have this comparatif, and we'd accept 5 or 6 projects out of 65 or something. And the second time during the year, half of those 65 projects were simply repeats from the first time. And so projects we liked already the first time, but we said no to, simply had to wait for the second time around to get a yes. So it'll be once a year, it'll be 10 or 12, and if all goes well, it'll go from 115 to 165 next year.
Spark, do you own a production company?
Well, actually, that kind of feeds me into the question. So I've been producing shorts for a while, and we kind of run it under a company that's Family Run. With like Apple.
Sure.
The Sarandoses?
Well, it's sort of that we're my name is Spark. You could probably imagine my family. So basically the thing is that we've never, because we haven't we don't do it to make money. We just make you movies and stuff
Sure.
like that.
Okay.
And film and stuff. And but we never registered the company. So is it
No, you-
1 year
yeah.
from registration, or is it 1 year from like when you actually started producing company?
No, it's 1 year being incorporated.
Graduate and incorporated.
Yes, incorporated.
So 1 year of somebody else, let's say for example, it's incorporated today.
Yes, you won't be eligible next May.
Really?
Yep. Yeah.
File now. Start opening up your company.
Yeah.
So you said it has to be 365 days, or it can be a calendar year. What was the answer to that question?
Oh mon Dieu.
If I incorporate in December 2025.
Yeah.
Can he apply?
Then
in
May is 6 months, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So it has to be 365
Yeah.
days.
It needs to be, yeah.
May 2027.
Yes, sorry, yes.
I got you.
But you
Yeah.
could come in
Okay.
with someone else that's already eligible, and then the year after that, you can come in.
And you can also start using this as an opportunity to begin the conversations with the SODEC team and develop those relationships, dot some T's, dot some I's. You may have to, for example, figure out how to position your transferable experience as an independent producer to give faith that this new corporation would, still be able to be on time and budget.
What the team will look at is, of course, what you did outside of this new company. They will see that you've indeed produced stuff. So, it's not we don't put your CV into a machine and a decision comes out. It's like every case is so unique. But you need, as you said, you need to start having the conversation. We need to work together to make sure that you can be admissible at one point.
We're going to go to Christina and then Maude. Was that you back there? Okay. And someone back there too? That's Seema? Okay. Christina, Maude, did you have one too? Anna?
No.
You're Anna too, no?
I am Anna.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go to Christine, Maude, Lizanne, Seema.
Martin, I think.
Oh, and the umbrella in the back.
Okay, great.
Good job.
Yeah, you're up.
Well,
No, it's your turn. Yeah.
so yeah, you were talking about merging filmmakers find a production company to apply for it. So do you see that happening a lot? And the production company needs to have at least one, it needs to be eligible at least with one short film, right?
Yes.
And if I make my company and I have 1 year of this company, can I try to make a co-production with?
That's possible in the regular stream, but starting next year, we won't be accepting co-productions in the program because mentoring producers, this, again, the aim of the actual program is to professionalize producers. I think we only got 4 co-productions in the last 4 years, and they were disasters. It's too complicated to learn.
This one film done for my company, for me to be eligible for it then, and my own, for example.
But you've produced one film with your company?
But not with the company, right? I had a company in Brazil, I produced with this company, I closed it, and here I don't have a company.
Okay, now you're getting into a terrain that belongs to my professionals. Like I said, every case can be unique. So you just come in, and we'll let you know what your status is and what you need to. Yeah.
Well, you said a co-production. Are you incorporated?
No.
So were you saying that because you were suggesting you would incorporate, then enter in a co-production with another corporation?
Get the one movie done.
Okay. So one other, I'll let the SODEC team obviously answer your question specifically, but another route is, as a producer, you could go to a production company with a project and propose that they let you leverage their company with you as the emerging producer.
Yep.
And so it wouldn't be a co-production, you would be producing under their company.
Yes.
And then you also wouldn't have to shoulder the risk, burden, and costs of incorporating a new company. The other issue with a formal co-production between two production companies, is then you both have to not only incorporate a new company, which has initial startup costs and maintenance costs, but there are shareholders agreements. It's very complicated. So very few, I would expect, production companies would be interested in going through all that, especially for a short. So I would expect that either the path to success would be you incorporating or joining under a production company and producing through
Well, certainly if you want to have your own company and you want to produce, definitely create your company. But then in the meantime, if you already have a project and you're ready to go, then for that project, try to find another way in, and that's a good idea. Yeah.
And how the rights, when you find a production company, I don't have a company, how the rights work?
Well, if you come in with your own company, then you own the rights to your...
Well, who owns the rights right now?
It's open, it's between the two of you, you negotiate.
I don't need to give up my rights, for example. I not need to.
It's something that we don't interfere in. It's really something that you need to...
There's no room.
Okay. Can I just add something too? As well, when I had applied to SODEC, I had an incorporated company, but the incorporated company had no produced films under its belt. But I myself, as an individual producer, I think I had two. And in this case, when I submitted, they analyzed, and they ended up accepting it. So
Yeah, that's not.
there's hope. You don't have to
It's a more so bad company, but it's hard, right? If you want to do your own projects.
What are the costs? It's like over 990.
$500-600. We were talking about this today. Owner, WNR.co. It's run by RBC. Owner.co, and it's actually run by RBC. And if you sign up for a business account, they'll give you $200 or $300 off that. So you can do it online. I think it takes less than government. Like it takes 24 hours instead of 72. You'll be done by tomorrow.
There you go. Come on.
I'm a brand ambassador in a way, because the other thing that's really great is Click-Secure is never online when I want it to be. It's always on maintenance the Saturday. They say that and actually modify something. So owner actually facilitates that, so you don't have to deal with those platforms. And they have health guides you hover over. It's like, file your annual declarations. It's like, what the hell does that mean? File over. It takes you to a whole thing with a video chatbot, or not chatbot, with a video human that tells you things.
So we are.
I like it. It's on it.
I think it feels very sponsored right now.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, look, the Quebec government platform, a lot of them are really challenging.
So yeah, I love Owner. Honestly, I don't know if I wouldn't have been able to incorporate without it. It would have been so daunting and overwhelming.
Or you can get a lawyer as well.
Oh my God.
They'll cost more.
Oh my
With the lawyer, it's like $950 or something.
Yeah.
But they take care of everything.
Yeah. Mode.
I guess my question was more in terms of jury turnover, because I per se had this experience, but also know many people who have applying the first time, getting some very good notes that very positive, and they say, oh, it's a great project, it's different. And then we address a note, then apply a second time, and then the notes we get we see that you've applied all the notes, but we don't essentially we don't see any value in this project. It's oh, second, and you're great.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, in terms of because I mean, sometimes it could it's frustrating.
It is. Totally. A few things there. We try to, let's say there are 6 people in the committee. We try to retain at least 3 the following time to have that kind of memory of the process. But it's also important to change some of them, or else you run the risk of creating cliques, des clics en français, right? Where there's this editorial line and blah, blah, blah. And if you don't agree with that, that's fine. But the other problem we run into, and that's why it's very hard to retain a few 2 times in a row, is because it takes months. When you're on a jury and you get 127 projects to go through, And even when we split that up into subcommittees, because 127, no one can sit through 100. But even when you split it in 2 or sometimes in 3, it takes months. And so the people, I mean, we do pay them, but not a fortune. And so they say, you know, I did it two years ago. Thank you. Call me next year. You know, it's like, it takes a lot. So it's hard to retain the same people. And then another phenomenon, and it's not exactly what you described, but, you know, sometimes you will get feedback. And of course, the feedback is based on how the project was received in comparison to a certain mass. Next time around, the mass will have changed. So you're now compared to other projects. But having said that, I totally empathize. It's very, very frustrating when you get a committee that praises you, and then the next committee, it's the same project, but they have another appreciation of it, you know, yeah, it's very, very hard. We do try to have a few people.
I was just curious if there was like a specific turnover.
No, well, we are. They do. I mean, there's if you read the SODEC law for the, you know, audiovisual, we are supposed to effect a turnaround every year, but you know, that's too harsh. And so that's why I say from committee to committee, we try to retain a few and then change a few. And then so it's like a chain like that. Yeah.
Lisanne.
I have a question in regards to having Americans being joining project, because Gavin project, just correct, 75% in English, 25% French, then Quebec. In whole Hollywood actor coming home, blah, 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 I know that's a haunted Christmas tree story. Well, my question is, if we get through development money and we ask Telecom and SODEC and all that, and then we have like some American actors just like, I want to be the lead, or I want to take over, or whatever, however, I'm not saying he's going to save the day, because I'm not expecting the cavalry. So how do institutions to fair so that feels about American coming in and being like, I want to be invested in this, but there's already government funds.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's no co-production treaty between Canada and the United States. So an official co-production cannot get public funding. The way to go around this is to get private investors to invest in the company, in the Quebec company. That we saw that, or you can get American money through pre-sales. So it's not an actual co-producer, but a sales agent will find you money. And so in the financial structure, there is a line that can be pre-sales, and that money comes from Europe or from the United States or from God knows where. So that's one way to expand your financial sources. Am I answering your question?
Yeah, but how do institutions feel about that money coming in maybe later, once development money has been invested in projects?
We expect the financial structure in production to be much more diversified than when you were in development. And from experience, almost all the English projects, feature-length fiction films that we produce have that extra money. Because most English-speaking films are shot with a bankable actor. They cost a lot of money, and that becomes a reality only if there is pre-sales that injects a lot of money into the project.
And what is it with violent kicks?
Yeah.
the SODEC is.
Yes. Right. Well,
Sima?
I
So thank you for the opportunity to present today. Thank you, Devin, for organizing this wide invitation. I want to congratulate both of you for taking so to even give us folk. I'll say for myself, and I'm sure for everyone. Before I answer my question, I just want to comment on Mo's question. I first of all, I applaud you for asking that question. I think that's something I hope to speak with you about at some point, Joanne, as well, is that the first time, like, for example, we applied, my colleague and I, for a project, yes, there were some discriminatory contents, I'd say, based on my opinion. That was how I saw it. And some that were constructive, I went with the constructive ones, made those improvements, and really developed more and more the characters as they had requested, and a few other things. But then when we got the second response, I mean, it was a different set of readers, so like one might have been the same than the others. It was trashed, like really trashed, and it was discriminatory. Like, it took me 2-3 weeks just to digest, and my colleague as well. And it was so, you wonder, they're like, I put all those, I improved it, whatever was there, I improved, and then to have a set of other people who totally see it a different way, and come with a different set of however they see life, how they see characters, cultural characters, whatever the case may be. So you put the improvements, but then you're like back to not even square zero. You're like back -10 in the bag. So I'm sure, Joanne, there must be a better way of evaluating when you take some of the constructive feedback that is constructive and you apply it. If those readers are different, the following year, maybe there should be some guidelines in the file that, like, we asked them to improve this. Just see if they did. And then you can also give your opinion. I'm sure there's a way to make it work and a little more fair, because
yeah, in our regular stream for feature-length films, we do inform the new committees of what was communicated before. We do that. For shorts, the sheer volume is so huge that we've not yet found a way to do that. I think that's a good idea. And I won't get into commenting what you just said. We've spoken a lot. Yeah.
That's okay, for we're allowed to. But that's, yeah, if you could improve that, I think it would help a lot of people. And,
yeah, I think on peut l'améliorer, but just nonetheless keep in mind that it's never a judgment on the project in its own bubble by itself. It's always in a comparative mode. So even if let's say we retain the same committee and the same committee is impressed by the improvements that you made, you may still be refused because you're now being compared to another set of projects. Mm-hmm. And, out of 127, we picked 16.
One thing I experimented with, I haven't gotten the results back, but I think it's with Calc. I added a top page that was like, here's the feedback that was received on the last round, and here. So essentially it was like a revisions list. We'll see what comes back, but this was, we talk a lot about A/B testing and iterative design and versioning. It's like, this is my attempt to at least try to communicate, like, here's what's happened since last time.
That's interesting.
And saying, like, it's kind of, because you do it with clients, right? Like when we're at Mattel, you'll be like, here are the notes from the executives. And it's like, yes to this, no to this, here's why, here's how we did this. So that's a tactic that I'll get back to you on if we see
that's
any
a really, so that you
it's like trying to
do
own
the job.
that process
exactly.
and saying, look, here's the notes we got last time. These were stupid, so we're not doing it. But these are good notes, and here's how we did it, and at least try to force some coherence.
And for my application, for my feature, in my producer's letter, I said the first time around, you guys gave us this note, this and that.
Yeah.
But I did mention the fact that the revisions in accordance.
Yeah, I think to own it is a really good way to go. I would just say, though, that though you may receive the comments as a kind of wish list or strong suggestion, they are nonetheless suggestion. And I would even say they're not supposed to be suggestion. What the comments are, and it'd be interesting if you can keep this in mind. This is your first official public reactions to having read your. This is how they received it. This is what they understood of it. This is how they reacted to it. What you do with that reaction is up to you. Does it speak to you? Yes, act on it. It doesn't speak to you, go, okay, I need to explain what my project is in another way. They did not understand. So it's like a tool, it's like a mirror. It's like, this is how it was received. If it wasn't received the way you were hoping, then you adjust, but it's your project. We do not direct people to do this and change this and this and that.
Is there any eligibility boundaries if you're the producer but also going to be like co-writer, co-director? Like, can you wear multiple hats?
If it's in the emerging creator program, if you have multiple hats but some of them are that's fine. But we've stopped accepting projects where there's one individual doing everything. Because again, when we did accept them, it was catastrophic. Okay. Yeah.
So if you're a producer and writer, you should be co-writing and then there'd be another.
Yes. But in other, elsewhere, we don't have these restrictions. We have them in the program. Why? Because it's supposed to be professionalizing producers. So it takes a lot of energy just to produce, right?
Great. And my second eligibility question is, can a project, if we use white and white as our case,
yes,
Christina applied to SODEC to get funding for the white to be a feature, or is it now canceled out of that program?
No.
You received short film money.
No, it can come in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
When we applied to SODEC for the short, I was a producer and co-writer. So
Yeah.
Oh,
that helps.
but
Joanne?
you can go back and apply.
I know.
And develop it as a feature and then
Well, the script's already written, so or it's being written.
Yeah.
Joanne, it's 7:39. It
I'm
looks
sleeping
like we've
here.
got
I'm
two-
sleeping over.
Looks like we got two more burning questions.
Oh, we do.
Can we take those?
Sure.
Yeah? Cynthia and then Maude?
I didn't read the guidelines or anything, but so I've heard there is a period for the project you need to make, like.
Oh, the development.
Yeah, the development. Or do I make that in my project? I will do that movie 1 year.
Okay, well, if you get into the program and we develop with you, if it's a short, you have 1 year. You can finish in 2 months, but you have 1 year to develop. If it's a feature, you have 2 years. Now, if it's a short, if you're done in 3 months, you can come back and ask for production money right away. If it's a feature and you finish the writing in 4 months, you have to wait 2 years.
2 years.
Yes, for the feature. No, because you know why? Because we need to make sure that we have the money. The thing is that let's say like this December we are receiving the 5 projects that we developed 2 years ago. If someone from last year is a quickie and wants to, they're ready and they want to be part of that comparative, then suddenly there's 6 projects. It's unfair, right? So we need to, in features, the cohort needs to remain the same. So you can, but usually it's funny that, it's funny because when I speak like this, everyone, the vibe I get is that, oh no, 2 years, that's too long. In reality, sometimes they plead for us to do more time, you know. So no, I think, you know, 2 years works well.
And the money comes all at the beginning, I guess.
It's by phase, but most of it, I think it's 80 or 90% of it is at the beginning.
It's a new bank culture.
Yeah, you still got lots to do anyway. Before we get to you, Maud, I just want to make sure, I have a blind spot here. Did anyone have a question over here that I might have missed? No? Okay. The reality is, we're not making films because, like, hopefully what this program has helped with is holistically to build a happy life and a sustainable art practice and be able to pay your bills. It's what we've talked about with the multi-sided business model, and it has to be multiple things that are fulfilling different things in your life. You know, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's SODEC or Calc or Canada Council. It's like, we're making the art because we need to and we feel it's important, not because we have a guaranteed, success in the marketplace.
Yeah. But I will say, and we were talking about this in the staircase, this is the worst time in Quebec film history for creators and producers, because everyone who was working 40 years ago is still working. Yeah. And there's like 5 new generations still, you know, it's like, retire already, you know. It's like, make room for newer people. But I'm telling you, like, I was, I did
90s, like, come on.
I know, no, for real. 90s, try the 80s. So when I in the early 200s, I was one of my professionals. I did something else. I was not 30 years there, but when I was chargé de projet, a big depot, right? Like for feature-length films was like 30 projects. We were going, oh my God, there were 30 projects. Last April, we had 84. And we picked 14.
They were training.
You know, so, I mean, the industry exploded, but the people who were producing in the 80s are still producing. I'm gonna open my veins, you know. It's like, and they're some of them are wonderful. It's just that, man, how are we supposed to help everyone if no one takes a break? You know, anyway.
Maud, last word.
It's getting late, and I'm going to say something stupid.
Oh no, it is recording, you know.
Yes, it is, yeah.
A little bit of follow-up as like a multiple hat wearing person. In terms of like the eligibility aspect, because like, let's say applying to the project, could it still be through my production company, but then I hire a producer to come work for my production company? So I am co-producing
Yes.
that person, but then
Yes.
writer director, like, you know.
Yes, well, we would, yes, if both of you have a producer title, you can, that can work, I believe.
Because sometimes for reasons like for ownership purposes, like
Of course.
want it to be through my production.
No, of
company.
course.
Or maybe it's this, the producer is not incorporated.
Yeah.
But like, you know, or they have their own company, but they're doing their own stuff, like, you know, so just like,
Yes,
like work under my umbrella.
yes.
Wondering if it was company or individuals, you know.
No, it's like, if you're writing, directing, and producing, we will ask you, in the program, we will ask you to be a co-producer and hire someone at the very least, yeah.
Okay. And that person that we hire should also be emergent, or could they?
They have to be emergent, or because if they're not, then they become executive producer. Yes, you had Anne-Marie Gélina, right? As an executive producer, right? Yeah, sure. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Johanne, for coming in and spending your weekend working on that presentation.
Thank you for having me.